good morning and welcome to the Drummergy Podcast, episode 118. Wow, that sounds reverby off the drums, doesn't it? Can you hear that?
Resonating this place.
I am here with my good friend, Mr. Scot Alexander, bass player for the band Dishwalla, and he agreed to be a part of this nut show that I've got going
Whatever
on.
happens.
Scott,
I'm down.
Welcome, man. You know, we were talking.
Awesome
We talked off and on over the last couple of years about how our little home studios keep evolving, and you do videos demoing different pedals and things, and bass tutorial, whatever. And it's like, not only to have like a recording studio, we're like developing our own mini television studios, so to speak, to make all this stuff happen.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely slowed down in that realm, and you've, doing all kinds of crazy stuff and getting creative in here. I kind of got burnt out on it a little bit.
Did you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I like your stuff. I like watching that stuff.
It's fun to hear from friends that are like, like maybe didn't expect that I was going to do well at it or something, or didn't know what I was going to say when I'm talking about, different features of gear. But it was fun to get that feedback for a while. But in all honesty, our good friend Tom Keithley,
yes,
from Boise, moved to Portland, and he's now the head guy at Cattle and Bread. But back in the day, there was a need at the old business that he was working for doing marketing, and their regular guitar demo guy was getting overwhelmed with bass gear, and he's a great bass player too. And he for a few years he had just been doing everything, and I think Andy Martin, he got sold off to Chicago Music Exchange, and did a contract with them and was doing all the videos for Reverb and stuff for a while, but he's back on his own. At any rate, I agreed to do one. Tom asked me, "Do you want to try doing this?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll do one and let's see how it goes. If you guys like it, great. If it's crap, just shelve it. Just forget about it. Hey, we tried, And Andy loved it, and Tom loved it. The company that we were working for, I think it might have been Electro Harmonics was the first one, and they dug it enough, and so it turned into another one. But then it turned into deadlines.
There you go.
We got to have this thing by tomorrow at 3:00, dude. And I can't edit, so I put the editing on my son Gabe, who was trying to go to college at the time.
Yeah.
He's like having to stay up all night doing this crap for me, and it was just too much. It was too much for how much work was involved.
I thought it was really well produced, though. It sounded good, looked good. I thought you did all the editing on that. It was your son, huh?
Yeah, Gabe did it all.
Well, I'm a Scot fan, so that's why the main reason I would watch. But then I found myself going, that's really interesting. Like, if I were a bass player or a guitar player or something, like, I would have to have that pedal or that effect or whatever it was.
I tried to have a perspective from when you're demoing a piece of gear to like, how would you use this in the real world and make this thing useful to, who might benefit from this, and take it from that angle a little bit. So it was interesting to them, try to play appropriate riffs for that piece of gear, and you kind of like put a little bit of thought into it.
Well, you really showed what each piece of gear was capable of doing. And that, oddly enough, had my interest.
Cool.
And I'm not even... I'm the guy at the back of the stage.
Hey, it's cool to see, like, there's some of that gear, like the orange, the Terror Bass amplifier that we did. I kind of put a bunch of work into that one, but that's had the most views for orange out of any of the demo videos that got done for that piece of gear and stuff at this point. So that was cool. So,
while the producer's weighing in, she says, "I love your video with the skateboarding 70s vibe."
Oh yeah,
that was a pretty awesome one. I have to agree. James Ewing from Ohio. What's up?
What's up, James?
And then another James, Harrison. Howdy, Scott.
Harrison, that's my buddy right there.
I think he's living in Virginia now.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. James, is that right? You're living in Virginia, I believe. Yeah.
Miss you, dude.
He's just sneaking around
Yeah. was in New Mexico and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
James is a drummer that's been around the Boise music scene. You see him; he's a regular commenter on Fred's videos and stuff. But
yeah, he's a regular commenter on everybody's video, I think. Well, so I've got questions, and we've known each other for 12 years, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe longer.
It's crazy.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Just over a decade. Sure.
Yeah. And, we've done a bunch of stuff together, playing, recording videos. So I've heard a lot of your stories over the years, and maybe we can retell some of those.
If anything comes to mind. But yeah, there's been a lot of long drives we've had to do.
Yeah.
In a Matt Pouzon's Suburban or whatever.
Yeah, whatever car we were in.
Whatever car we were in.
So
that was an interesting time, really, because I'd kind of felt we moved to Boise about 20 years ago, and I came here to stop playing music. I quit Dishwalla in 2005.
I can't look at
it. Was really the last record I was going to make with those guys, and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I just got to get out of here. I want to get my family a house where my kids can have their own rooms, and we
need to move that a little bit closer to.
We've got to move on. But and so we did that, and I started this business, and when the economy tanked, it tanked. Found myself by 2009 like, I got to do something. So I had to go back to playing music again, and sort of since 2009, 2010, I've kind of like become this working musician,
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really cool. This like, some people might feel bad about it or something like that. It's not on some level or something, but it's really kept my family afloat, and I've really been thankful for it.
Yeah,
it saved me, a lot of times. But but what happened was I went straight into playing in this cover band downtown, where I was locked into one gig, one location for a few years. And I'm starting to meet people like Steve Fulton and Pat Story and you guys and different people in the community. And I'm hearing about all the good times playing in Sun Valley and Riggins and wherever, and I kind of wanted to experience playing out and about.
Yeah.
So I quit that gig, and that's about when I met you and Matt Pouzon, and we started playing in that cover band. But but we had lots of adventures. It was cool. And then I feel like I kind of got that out of my system.
That's an interesting way to put it. I got it out of my system.
Well, it's like, it's a lot of fun times. And there's some good money to be made, for, like Jukebox and some of these wedding bands that travel around. It's great. But I kind of feel like, you can only have that same experience like so many times before it's like, okay. Yeah. It turns into a job,
Well, sure. I think,
and that's fine too, but
we all have to have income. It's just, what are we choosing to use to get that income? I prefer drumsticks.
Yeah. Well, every musician has like to chart their own course here and how they're going to make this whole thing work.
Yeah.
And it could be teaching, it could be live shows, it could be online session work, it could be sync licensing, it could be any plethora of things. But I think it takes a while to kind of figure it out. And figure out where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and maybe develop the weaknesses like video and these types of things that you don't think about as a musician.
I think specifically to your experiences that you've had, you are able to offer a unique perspective, I think, to making a living as a musician, being an original band, being signed to a record label, being on the radio, traveling the world, doing late night television shows and songs and movies and TV and all of those things, and kind of this curve of that. and
to the 90s coming back in style again, and
yes,
kind of
yeah,
ramping up a little bit, you know, maybe.
But it's I think you would agree that for a musician to really make it right now in today's climate, you got to have multiple streams of revenue.
You really do.
You got to be
that's why
involved in a
I
lot
feel
of
like
things.
you mentioned that, and it's like I almost feel guilty in a way because it's just not that world anymore. It's not that landscape, as you know, anymore. Things don't work the same as they did 30 years ago or 20 years ago. For the most part, you know, we were there, I feel like, towards the end of when there was money in the industry. We really were. And I can remember a point where our A&R guy at A&M was like, dude, you should have been here in the 80s. Like the money was like, because they had to like have expensive accounts at least in the 90s and keep track of things. But
we
in
were
the
both
80s,
just
it was
born
just like,
10 years too late.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
Plus, you know, a lot of the reason why we signed with A&M was like, you know, I loved a lot of the bands that were 80s bands that were on there. The Police and Squeeze. And
what year did Dishwalla get signed?
We got signed in April of '94.
Okay.
I remember. We dragged our feet on signing the actual contract, but it was April of '94. And I'd been in the band. Well, we started the band calling it Dishwalla only about a year prior. It was only really about 18 months process from when we started calling us Dish and then Dishwalla to landing a deal. So it was pretty quick, 18 months.
Yeah.
You know, I'd known those guys for years prior, but yeah.
Did you play in were you playing in an original band before Dishwalla, or were you playing?
I only played in an original band. I was never in a cover band until I moved to Boise, Idaho.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, you grow up learning songs and playing covers with your friends, really, but we only saw that, like, it sounds kind of brutal to say now, but like as a young guy starting out, and my heroes was this band Toad the Wet Sprocket, who got signed, that went to my high school.
Yeah.
You know, two of the guys went to my high school. And so it's like, oh, wow, this is possible.
Sure.
And, you know, and I'd already started playing. And so I was in a band that sounded a lot like Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Right. Because that was a huge influence.
And
they were doing the right things.
Right. Exactly. So, and then little by little, it started sounding different than that. But at any rate, yeah, we saw that it was possible, and you're too dumb to know that it's not actually possible. Really, it's we're talking about like 1% chance that this is going to work out here. But but that band stuck around for a few years, and our drummer, sadly enough, committed suicide in that band.
Oh wow!
And then when he was gone, George Pendergast, who's the drummer of Dishwalla, that's how I met George. He came into Circus Life, and when his other band, Life Talking, this is kind of like 80s, primarily a cover band, really, but they had originals, and they were doing better than us, and they had an opening, and their management was like, you know what, you guys need a bass player, and so they put me up there for a little bit, and then what happened was, you know, they started doing all right, and
so you weren't like officially in the band when you started playing?
Exactly. They were paying me like $100 a gig, which was pretty good for a kid. And the manager goes, well, we can't afford to keep paying you this much. Do you want to be a member of the band? And so like,
and make less money.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. Let me run it by my wife, because I don't know, but yeah, I saw some promise in what was going on, the direction that it was going, not the material, because the band sounded like In Excess or some type of more 80s kind of vibe. Yeah. And yeah.
Wow.
Like there was a computer on stage, and it was all, you know, keyboards, keyboard heavy, and synth heavy, and it was more like New Order or In Excess or kind of U2-ish, I guess, but more 80s. And this is post Nirvana at this point. This is after 1992. So like this is just lame. Like,
Yeah.
you guys got to move on and write new material, or this is not going to go anywhere. So basically rewrote everything and started from scratch. But that was what we had to do. We just shifted gears completely and just scrapped it all, changed the name, rewrote all the material, same guys.
Wow. I had no idea about the 80s kind of sound that you
kind of like midline, really, because it's sort of like the end of hair metal when the first record Without You came out, and then it goes like more 90s vibe.
It did. I always called midline like Seattle's ugly step cousin or something. It's on the fringe of that whole thing.
It was a rough time.
Yeah,
it was a rough time if you're in that realm. I was watching some Rick Beato video with Butch Walker. He was in a full-on hair metal band that was signed, and the record came out on a major label. They got dropped, and the 90s happened, but there was a lot of bands that were kind of Alice in Chains as well. If you listen to like their early stuff, they were on Headbangers Ball, and the next minute they were on 120 Minutes. So it's like the shift. Like, if you didn't shift gears, you were going to get left behind.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Well, so you guys got signed in 94, you said, right? April 94.
Yeah.
We banged our head against the wall until we got a record deal in 2001 on Gotham Records. It was an independent label, but it was kind of this weird thing, sort of under the umbrella of Warner Brothers at the same time. It was this weird relationship that I don't even understand still to this day.
Yeah.
But I remember signing that contract, and after I signed it, I stood up and I said, I'm going to go hang myself in the garage.
You didn't feel good about it, right?
I did not feel good about it at all. I was like, I feel like I just gave away everything that was important to me. It wasn't on the outside. We're like, hey, we got signed, and people are like, good for you. But knowing like what was in it was like, we're going to really have to, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And it didn't work out well at all.
Right.
They were supposed to get tour support, never got tour support. It was like everything we did was funded on credit cards.
Yeah.
It was, between the four of us, we could have bought a really nice house with the amount of money we went in debt to. It's like, this really, really hurts. It was awful.
Yeah. We were super fortunate to have our manager, who was kind of our age, and he was working for MCA Records at that point, which was like ghetto, like the worst major label you could be on. And in all honesty, I married young. I married at 20 years old, had our first child at 21. So I'm the youngest guy in the band, the only one married, the only one with a kid. And so it was sort of do or die with me and music. Like, is this going someplace? If not, I got to jump out right now and get in college and figure out my life. So I put sort of a time limit on it, and the time limit had lapsed, and I'd kind of given notice to the guys, like, I've got to look for something else. I got to bail. And about 2 weeks later, we got an offer from a company called Hollywood Records, and they were a subsidiary of MCA that essentially Sublime was on. That was really the only kind of decent band they had. Now, and the deal wasn't great, but it was okay. And but it was a major label deal. Yeah. And at any rate, I was like, well, maybe this is going someplace, and I better hang in there. And so I hung in there another, I mean, I don't know how many months it was. We had LA shows. We were playing showcase type shows down in LA, and they were going real well. And I don't remember how the connection happened, but somebody somewhere got an A&M rep out to come see us, and he had heard the demo first. And Mark Mazzetti, like then and there, like that night, was just like, I gotta have you guys. Yeah. And it was the enthusiasm and the love for the project, and like he's just, he really won us over. And so, but we knew it was a great company, and it wasn't like huge money like some of our peers were getting, but we're like, it's okay, because the marketing side and these guys have got our backs. It's a good company.
When they came to you and said, we got to have you, was Counting Blue Cars written at that point?
No.
Were you guys not? Oh, so you weren't
No.
performing that song yet?
No. Almost. Like it came quickly after that point, but it was a newer song. Yeah, it wasn't what got us signed. What got us signed is a song called Charlie Brown's Parents. It's what Mark loved. And Mark was a huge fan of Queen. And the chord progression in that song has got some weird kind of minor twists to it, some twists and turns to it that are reminiscent of Queen, and where JR is able to take his voice, towards the end, it gets a little bit operatic and stuff. And so he loved that aspect of it. It was like, this is going to be my Queen. Like, I got to have these guys, so
when was Counting Blue Cars the first single off Pet Your Friends? It wasn't? What was the first single?
So what happened was the band and all the males at the record wanted one single, Haze. And the females wanted a song, wanted Counting Blue Cars. And what happened was the band essentially won. We went with Haze as the first single, went to New York, shot a video for it. And it may have aired on 120 Minutes once or twice, and that was it in terms of it airing. So it was a huge waste of money on that. These videos just like kill your whole budgets. I think it's a shared expense because it's marketing. But
what did it cost to make a video then?
The budget on Haze was, I think, 80,000.
Okay.
And that was a cheaper video. Yeah. And then it went up a little bit for Counting Blue Cars, like 85 or 90. And then Charlie Brown's Parents was 120, and Give was also around 120, I think. Yeah. And then by the second record, by 1998, they had a rule, like we're not making any videos until the single is charting at radio, because we're wasting so much money on these videos that aren't getting played.
1998. So
yeah. So anyways, Haze comes out. We tour for 6 months. They put us on the road with Better Than Ezra as an opening band and a few other artists and stuff. Blind Melon we toured with in 95. The record comes out in 95. And at any rate, Haze kind of does its thing, fades away. And we're kind of like, well, we'll get another shot on the next record. Let's just keep touring and building our base, because, we're really coming out of nowhere. And they decided to put out a second single, Counting Blue Cars. I think it's it must have been sort of close to summer because it was a summertime hit. Mm-hmm. And then that thing kind of took like wildfire after a couple key stations added it. K-Rock in LA added it.
I don't remember if I heard it on the radio first or if I saw the video on MTV. I don't remember what order.
Yeah.
But I just loved that song. It was such an earworm, and I was working at Hertz Rent-A-Car at the time, washing cars. I always had jobs that I could quit really easy if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go on the road for 2 weeks. I'm out of here. I don't care if I have a job when I come home. I'll just mow lawns or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But we were there would be a bunch of us in the wash bay at Hertz Rent-A-Car, and that song would come on the radio, and everybody would just crank. You had like 4 cars all just at 11, blasting that song, and having like 12 garagemen all like, nice. Tell me how, the worst choir you've ever heard in your life.
Right.
But we just loved that song so much. And then I think the next song I heard was Charlie Brown's Parents, and I know I saw that on MTV, but I just love that. It just seemed like, oh, this is a little heavier sounding to me, was heavier sounding. I was like, oh, this is really,
it was really surprising great. That, although, even Counting Blue Cars is sort of a lighter rock song, I always think of you as kind of a rocker and stuff. And like, there was a lot of rockers that kind of got behind us, and I was a little worried about it. Sometimes you're paired up on the road. I can remember us getting paired up with King's X in 1996 and stuff. How is this going to go over?
That's,
in
apples and oranges,
right? And it was great. Their fans were totally great, and
What's the?
It's maybe we overthink those things
Oh,
way
probably.
more than normal music listeners actually do. They like a song, they like a song.
Yeah. It's interesting, Midline's open up for so many nationals.
Yeah.
I can't even possibly think of all of them, but there were a few times I was like, really?
Yeah. How's this gonna work?
We're gonna play a show with those guys? It's like it was either like we were super heavy or they were like almost like Slayer, like the audience is gonna eat us.
Yeah.
They were still booing the other band when we got on stage.
Well, it really, really grows you as a band.
Yeah.
When you have these opening slots and you see what the headliner is like, it's like, oh, okay, that's how this looks.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to be doing. It's a huge lesson, and we got that lesson a lot through that era, because the label, they wanted us in front of the most bodies that we could. So it was a lot of opening slots, especially the radio festivals. And when it's so fun now. We did this Creed summer of '99 cruise last year, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the bands that we toured with in the '90s, and it's just so cool as adults that we've all just lived so much life at this point and been through so much, and the ups and downs of the industry and personal lives and everything.
Do you feel like there's way less pressure now when you go and do
there's
shows?
Like zero pressure.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going with this. Like the competition between bands at these radio festivals and stuff back in the day, like you almost like have to try and out rock each other.
Yeah.
I can remember playing this HFS festival. This is basically K-Rock of the East Coast. It's a huge festival in JFK Stadium. And this is like the first Foo Fighters tour, and Garbage was there, and Cracker, and like every huge band of the time was there, and we were on a smaller stage. It was a lot of big, smaller bands, but our label reps hadn't seen us in several months, and they came to that show and like, it's like a different band.
Yeah.
And it really was. We were so green when we started out, and we essentially thought we were the Beatles. We had no idea how much growth we actually needed to go through until we had to go through that situation, But I feel for a lot of bands these days that like they don't get that growth, getting slapped around and seeing like what this really needs to look like and sound like.
Did you ever? I know you worked with Debbie Schroeder, didn't you?
Maybe once or twice.
Oh, okay.
I always heard that Debbie's like everybody's favorite sound. She's a sound person locally.
So Rick, her husband Rick, had a company when I was growing up called Arena Sound and Lighting. They were like the go-to rental company for staging and sound and lights. And so when I remember I think I was freshly out of high school and started playing around the area, and Rick was this really imposing guy.
Freaking sweetheart, by the way.
He's super cool. But when I first met him, he was
if he doesn't like you,
he was really gruff with everybody.
Yeah.
And I thought pretty highly of myself. I could play the drums, I could put on a show or whatever. I looked like Napoleon Dynamite at that time. Just totally nerd alert. But he never said, "Hey, how you doing?" when I first met him. It was like, "Put your stuff over there." And just like,
right.
I don't think a lot of bands, at least locally, are kind of trial by fire thing through people like Rick. Once I got to know Rick, it was like, oh, this is like hanging out with my dad. Super cool, Yeah. But so much advice came from him on having your gear working.
Yes.
having your stuff together so that make his job easy.
Yeah. Every young artist needs a Rick Schroeder.
Yes.
Just set them straight.
Well, I have students who are working drummers around town, and I've had this discussion with them before. They don't know who Rick is, and I'm like, oh man, it's too bad, because I think there was just this growth thing that happened with everybody that is missing.
Yeah.
We need a new, really upset, grumpy sound guy in town to work with these people, because he had so much experience touring, and I think he did a lot of cover band work, traveling, and
he did
a
lot of he did a lot of touring back
he had so much experience. It's like,
but that is sort of the fun thing as a young artist, to like win those people over, win their respect, and that was always kind of a goal with us, we was always trying to like win people over. That's because when they don't know you got to kind of like,
I think it helped prepare the midline guys for when we started touring more and working with national acts, and kind of knowing what our role is in that whole thing, and the etiquette that's involved with that, and this is your space and this is their space, and making friends with the techs and the front of house people and all that, and just being part of the solution, because a lot of times they're looking at you like, oh, here's the inconvenience of the day. I got to deal with this new group of people.
Absolutely. And that stuff's never going to change.
No.
That was there in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and it's still there. So much of this business has changed. I watched some of these like Rick Beato interviews and stuff. It's like, I cannot stand listening to the 90s guys, I can't stand it. If it's 70s or 80s, 60s, 70s or 80s, I'll take it. But the 90s guys are just like, I don't know. So much of that realm is not relevant now, that it's just like talking about the old days kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honest, like, the Seattle guys like episode or something, like they couldn't remember a whole lot, and
Oh yeah. Well, their awareness was probably in a different spot.
I think even when I was in the 90s, I wasn't really a fan of maybe a lot of the music that was going on. But
so when you guys got signed, you're out touring and you're playing with Toad the Wet Sprocket and Matchbox 20 in that realm of
I mean, we crossed paths with those guys.
Yeah,
sure, we did back in the day.
Blind Melon, that kind of group of
we were the last band to tour with Blind Melon before Shannon died.
Okay.
That was horrible.
Yeah.
That was a horrible tour. It's a horrible tour. Sometimes like you're out with another artist and their career is not going real well, and it's a real hard time for them. Mm-hmm. They've put their whole life into an album, and it's not selling well. It's not responding well at radio. Someone in the band's got substance abuse problems, and we're all trying to keep the person sober. And at any rate, it was really hard. We were the first night of the tour. Their tour manager comes to us. Shannon really shouldn't have been on that tour at all. He just came out of rehab and wasn't ready, and but was probably like, I got this, I'll be good. And so the tour manager's like, don't give him any money. He's going to ask you for money. You don't be smoking anything or drinking around him or anything. And sure enough, first night of the tour, Shannon comes up to me trying to get some money.
Yeah.
Trying to tell me he needs some money for his kid. He's going to see his kid in Illinois or wherever we were going. Wanted to get him a present. It was really hard. Yeah. So anyway,
and probably as he's speaking those words, you're like, no,
I can't. I know.
Right. That's wow.
Yeah. So and it wasn't just Blind Melon. It was, there was a few bands like that. They were on their sophomore slump record because it was the era of the sophomore slump.
Yeah. I think
it's hard to follow this.
Do you think that every band kind of goes through that? Their second record is just kind of like, there's so much pressure to, like, the first one's so successful and it's new and it's exciting.
You've got your whole life to write the songs for your first record. You've got 6 months for your second record. It's so true. And I mean, I don't know if it is still a thing today. I really don't know.
Well, we're not really in the land of albums.
We're not.
We're in the land of singles.
I mean, it is. I mean, I think about like Chapel Roan right now or something like her second record. She's probably gonna have to take a total left turn to pull it off. And or like back a few years ago, Lorde. Everybody's like, Lorde is like insane songwriter. Like this is gonna blow up. Like sophomore slump. Like her second record didn't do real well. So maybe it's still going on. I don't know. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard for us. But our second record, it was probably one of my favorite recording experiences. It was just a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had the money from the first record, and
Hopefully was the third record, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember the title of the second one.
Basically, first record, second record got out of our deal. It was a huge mess. Our second record, basically, we had to get it done. Once we're in the process, our A&R person was just like, we've got to actually get this done by this date, or it might not come out at all. I remember him telling me, because there was a huge merger with Seagram's Vivendi was buying Polygram. It ended up becoming Universal, and at any rate, we put that record out, toured for 6 months, and it did its thing. And then we find ourselves in 1999. They throw us onto Interscope when the merger happened. New A&R person, who is Andy Brokaw. It's Tom Brokaw's daughter. She knows nothing about music. and
Interscope, aren't they like a heavy label?
Well, heavy and pop. Because yes, we're in the realm of Korn, literally Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Eminem.
Okay.
At this point. But Britney Spears and all the pop stuff's coming out too. So the landscape changed, and they were just basically going to shelve us. So we asked to be like, oh, we got out of our deal.
Wow.
Yeah. And then our original A&R guy, Mark Mazzetti, who signed us to A&M in the first place, he finds himself at an independent label with a bunch of money, and they're trying to copy the marketing plan of Wind Up, who had Creed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was basically they were just going to throw a bunch of money at the project till it sold. And so because that Creed thing didn't happen organically at all. So millions of dollars.
Yeah, if I had to guess, $4 or $5 million to get those guys.
It was $1 million to get it to like radio. Mm-hmm. So in just to get it there, and then to pump it at radio. And then they're like, well, we're in this deep at this point. We might as well keep throwing money at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one approach.
Well, Midline with with the song Onward, we did a small little radio campaign. It cost just under $2,000, and it went to like B markets. It was kind of like an experiment, and I think it was like for 6 weeks, just to see how it would do, and it did pretty well. And I think a couple of those stations played it for like 6 months.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. But the company that we went through, which is Ocean Media, I think. Mm-hmm. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, he's like, yeah, if you guys really, really want to push something like this, $40,000 will get you on bigger markets for like 2 weeks or something. It was
right.
The amount of money that just gets astronomical, at least for my wallet.
I mean, you think about, what you could do with $40,000, just with Facebook or Instagram, or
right? Yeah.
Instead, it's like, no wonder nobody cares about radio.
Yeah.
You could do so much more online for your money.
Exactly.
That it's, it means something to us because we're like the old guys. We want to see the singles go up the charts, but it's sort of meaningless unless you're going to follow it.
I have a hard time sometimes shaking like the old school thought of doing things, and at the same time feeling like, well, you got to adapt to how it's working now, and cracking that. I've been just trying to crack eggs my whole life, Scott. How do you get into this thing? How do you get into this next whatever it is? It's like trying to unsolved mysteries. Unsolved Mysteries should do a whole thing about how bands work. At what point did they murder their manager?
Episodes, because there's no it used to be that there was a quantifiable path, at least in our day.
Yeah.
Gosh, I apologize for talking about the old days again.
Well, Scott.
But I think, I'll tie this back into current times.
Yeah.
There was a quantifiable path before, like if you'd sold 2,500 CDs, if you had, getting local and regional press, you've toured regionally, you have 50,000 names on your email list, like Toad the West Rocket did. If you've done the work on your own, you can at least get someone at these labels to listen to it,
Right.
and check it out and say, you know what, these guys have got something going on in this area. Maybe we ought to check it out. It's no different now. There's quantifiable things, and it just doesn't really matter if it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's or Spotify or whatever. Wherever these numbers are adding up, wherever you've built your tribe and you've built your base, it's all about numbers now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's getting harder to fake the numbers, so the numbers are more useful to the labels. But now artists are like, well, what do I need the label for? All they are at this point is marketing dollars and a marketing department, and that can be outsourced if you really have the numbers on your own anyway. Then you could just really do it all on your own.
Sure. Well, I want to come back to this point of the conversation in a few minutes.
Okay.
Let's go back to early days, Scott. What drew you into wanting to be a musician to begin with? Was there something that happened at some point in your life you're like, I've got to do that? Did you open up Kiss Alive and see fire? Like a lot of people our age, that was kind of the thing, right?
I did open up Kiss Alive and see and Kiss Alive 2 and Double Platinum.
Yeah.
But I just, first things first, I loved music on a level that, at least in my circle of friends, was unusual. How much
you were into
the
it.
intense love for music. And an extra neighbor lady, an old lady, gave me this like Sears record player that played 45s in a box of 45s when I was probably 6 years old. And I just was obsessed with this thing, and then turned into the family system because, my mom had a decent stereo setup and all her old records. So I went through all those, and it was the DJ of the house, and she never put on records, just only the radio. But then, coming out of the 70s and into about 1980, when I started really buying records for myself, about 10 years old, probably at that point, and a lot of it was disco or hard rock. It was like, whatever was going on at the time. I can remember buying Back in Black when it came out. And I can remember listening to the Grease soundtrack when it came out, it's just whatever, but I was just obsessed with music. So growing up, it was just me and my mom.
Okay.
I'm the only child, just me and my mom. She had a boyfriend when I was about maybe 14 or 15, and they broke up. And he's like, I'd been borrowing his acoustic guitar, just kind of messing around on it. And he's just like, just keep it.
Really?
Yeah. And he said, just keep it. He said, make it sing. And I'm like,
oh, wow,
make it sing. And I'm thinking that's kind of like Clapton or something. Like, how am I going to make it sing? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know really, but I was kind of thinking melodically or something, but so he left me an acoustic guitar, and started messing around with that and playing bass lines on it or whatever. And what happened was my kind of core group of friends were all just sort of gravitating into learning instruments. And I had taken drum lessons at 10 years old.
Nice.
For a short period of time. Basically just had a snare. I was going to move on, and the way that Mike's drum shop in Santa Barbara, the way that Mike worked, he's like, you want to build yourself a jelly bean kit first. He's like, first we'll start you with the snare, and then you're going to get a floor tom or hi-hat.
You're just going to slowly
slowly, just older used drums that may not be matched.
Sure.
Is what he meant by jelly bean kit. Yeah. At any rate, so I started taking drums, and so I just gravitated normally to drums. There was a need there, and I can't remember what happened, but in our group there was a better drummer came in. Like, Scott, why don't you switch to bass? Borrowed a bass for maybe like 2 years or something like that.
You borrowed a bass for 2 years?
Yeah, before I even got my own. Just didn't have money, and I think because I didn't stick with drums, my mom was like, "No, we're not doing bass lessons." So I just had to go to the library and read books and figure this thing out.
Oh, wow.
And just listen to records, and I got good at working the cassette deck with my toes, so I could sit like this and hold the instrument and just work it like reverse. And
Really? Wow.
yeah, I'm just like the
Yeah.
kids now with YouTube. It's like it's not fair. I mean, I do it all the time too, but what we had to go
slow
through,
it down.
yeah, but what we had to go through to learn music with the record player or with the cassette deck was like,
Yeah.
it's amazing we even know how to play. But yeah, so didn't stick with drums, migrated to bass guitar about, I don't know, that's like 15 at that point. So I started late.
So started off pretty much self-taught.
Yeah, totally self-taught. Except for my best friend, Jeremy, that was the guitar player in Circus Life. He was getting guitar lessons. And so his parents paid for him. So he'd take his guitar lesson, and he'd show me the scales and modes and stuff that he was learning in his lessons.
Yeah.
So he was really my first teacher.
Oh, nice. So he was just relaying what he learned.
Exactly. He's like,
and...
I think it's the same on bass. Just do this. And so I was learning music through him. And then,
did you play in high school band or anything?
No.
There's not really a lot of demand for a bass player in symphonic band, but
no, I had a rough run in high school too. I was asked to leave high school first semester of my freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'd been in a bit of trouble through my junior high years and in the beginning of high school with the law, and and things weren't going well at home. I just wasn't going. It wasn't that I was doing badly. So they're like, Scott, you got to go to this continuation high school. Same thing Chris Cornell had to go to. I found out too. You got the same scenario with him. He got kicked out. They put him in continuation high school. Basically, the idea is that you're going to do these stupid workbooks every day and work your credits back up to get back and graduate with your graduating class. So I did that for a couple years, and I'm playing music the whole time. And I was like, I really just want to play music.
Yeah.
So I tested out of high school, what would have been my junior year, and went to Santa Barbara City College. And there I was able to take string ensemble. I was playing upright bass with
oh, wow,
with the bow, and took music theory. I took jazz improv, which was like the greatest class I ever had, and was playing in, at that point, I think 2 bands, Circus Life and Polychrome, and they were both doing real well at that point. And just playing music all day, and just like watching TV and practicing all day with metronome, or just watching Chips or whatever reruns, you know?
Yeah.
And so life was great. I was just playing so much music around what would have been my senior year, and I just excelled real quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the band started doing well. And then Shelly gets pregnant.
That's what happens when the band's doing well.
and then it was like, things are getting real. I gotta like get serious about this. So then that whole like span of like 2-3 years was just crazy fast.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
From leaving high school, City College, bands are doing well, band gets signed, and then off and running.
Yeah. Yeah. What okay, so coming back to where I said we're going to come back to this point, like bands doing it all on their own independently. They're totally in control of. We have so many tools available to us through YouTube and social media outlets, and even just having a website. Like, there's so much that bands can just do all on their own, all in house.
Yeah.
I mean, even when it comes to merch, you can set up a merch store. You don't actually have to go print physical.
Yeah, right. They
things.
Just place the order and it just shows up.
Yeah, there's a company somewhere that prints as
on demand.
Yeah. I kind of have a weird thing about this. I want to know what you think. Local bands who have managers. I'm not just local bands here, but local bands in general.
Right when you started down this road, I was thinking, oh, gosh, local bands with managers. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so, and my response is like, we've been self-managed for, 15, 20 years. I guess we're going on almost 20 years of being self-managed.
Yeah.
So totally self-managed. And the way it can work is like there's people within your realm that do have skill and talent that can be utilized in that project.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their thing. In your band, everybody's got their thing, and that's awesome. Utilize them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nobody knows your career better than you do.
Absolutely. 100%.
The management and my perspective is this, like if a manager can't bring anything to the table that you already have, then really there's no point in doing it.
Yeah.
And a standard management contract is 20% of everything. Every advance you sign, everything.
Yeah. We were managed by a company in Atlanta, Georgia for a while that it was 20% of everything.
Yeah.
And there's shows
these days,
sales,
there's not enough to go around.
No.
And there's certainly not enough to go around for a local band. I'd say if you're a local band that has someone that maybe is connected with the venues and has relationships and already has some connections going on and is super motivated, loves your thing, and doesn't want to take a percentage, just wants to help you out because they love your project, that might be someone to work with, but still maybe not sign something,
my experience,
you might say down the road, if this thing gets legs and it becomes too much for me.
The first manager that Midline had, Weeze, I think he might have been I don't know if he was an official partner with Rick Schroeder in the arena sound and lighting thing, but he was a lighting guy for Van Halen on Monsters of Rock tour. And so that was his credentials. I guess he really helped the band a lot. Eventually that relationship ended, and then we didn't do anything until we started working with Bill Aucoin from Kiss. Yeah. It was like, these are legitimate managers. But when I'm around town, I'm not as busy as I used to be, but somebody in the band's girlfriend or wife is parading around like they're the manager and they don't know anything about anything.
It can be damaging.
Yeah.
It really can be damaging, because you've all of a sudden you've got someone that's representing your project to the venue. And if they don't know what they're talking about or what they're doing and not acting appropriately, it can be a negative thing locally. Well, I think you look like an idiot.
Yeah, I think the venue just wants to have a relationship with somebody in the band.
They do.
And one person in the band. Yeah. Not like everybody in the band.
Of course. Yeah. Right. You're one person in the band that's good at that. Whoever that might be.
Yeah. They don't want the singer calling up the venue and having a conversation, and then the next week it's somebody else in the band.
Right.
And it's just like, just have one person that's representing the project.
Yeah.
Be that person.
Yeah.
And
I feel bad in our band because Justin, our singer, he's great with dealing with these types of things, and he takes a lot of that on, and that's his realm. He talks to our booking agent. We do have a booking agent, and so we don't necessarily need a manager. It just comes through email. The offers come through email, and we all communicate with each other and see if we're available and can do it. But publishing stuff too, that was a Justin relationship. So Justin deals with those people. So we have these things in place, but it's just ourselves that interact with them. Yeah. And then we all just communicate like adults. There was a point
like adults,
who knew? Well, there was a point in time where towards the end of before I quit, it was like, oh, they're information hoarding. They're just like, they're keeping the information to themselves. Like they've got the answers, and they don't want to share it with others. It's just like so frustrating to me. It's like so childish. It's just like, I gotta go.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. The hoarders of information. It's just like, why keep it to yourself so you can look like you know what you're talking about or something? I don't even know.
That's a weird dynamic.
It was a weird dynamic.
So you going back to Dishwalla, like what you left the band for a while and then came back. Is that true?
Yeah. So we made this last record, which I didn't like the direction the band was going musically. We're not getting along. We got a manager guy that's I just thought was leading us down not a good path, and it just wasn't. And at the end of the day, I wasn't supporting my family anymore. So that was really the crux of it. So that's when we left. We started building the house up here. A long story, but so we made that one last record with Sylvia Massey and Bill Simzik, who produced the Eagles and stuff. So it was produced by these great producers, and it was fun to make, but I didn't love the material. I didn't love the direction it was going, and I needed to support my family, so we got the heck out of there. And
what year was that?
That was 2004. We built the house here, so 2005 the record came out, and I didn't tour. Dan Lavery from Tonics filled in for about 6 months, and then that was the end of it. Everybody just scattered. JR put out a solo record, and he kind of moved on, and I think people just didn't communicate, and it just fell apart. It just didn't stop talking. And
the information hoarders.
Yes, they were all hoarding their information, I guess. And I was busy doing my stuff up here, so I didn't really know what was going on. But at any rate, it lasted about another 6 months, and then it just fell apart. And what happened was, and I want to say 2010, so about 5 years later, we get an offer to play some music festival in like Wisconsin or Michigan, one or the other. And it's with the Wallflowers and Tesla and a couple other bands, whatever. And we're like, do we want to do this? So we got this offer, came in, and JR, the original singer, got the offer as well, and he was down. Everybody was down. George was down. We were going to go do this thing, and we committed to do it. And then we don't know what happened on his end, but at any rate, the singer pulls out. We're stuck with this gig. So do we back out as well, or do we try and pull it off? And so we called our buddy Justin, who owned a studio in Santa Barbara, and we'd rehearsed at his place. Great vocalist and killer dude. So, dude, do you think you can learn a 40-minute set, in within 2 months? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm down. So, and then we pulled it off, and it was just like, the promoter was happy, the fans were happy, we had a great time. Want to do another one, and then it's been
just kept building off of that.
Yeah. So it's been like 15 years now or something.
Wow. Well, so you reached a point in your life where like music isn't working, and the demand on your time.
Yeah. Well, the 90s just like, it was really hard for all those bands.
Yeah.
There was a rough period where they just had to stick it out. And had we had some direction, if we had a good manager that was like, look, this happens with every decade. And it really does. I can remember early 2000s us struggling, on the road and looking across the street. I think we're in Dallas, Texas, and there was a venue across the street, and it was a theater. It was bigger than where we played. And it was literally Dokken and Poison and someone else. And it was sold out, and it was just like, it had the fire, you could tell people were ready for 80s at the early 2000s.
Sure.
And then the Killers came out, and all these sort of new wave sounding bands, and the hair metal stuff's coming back into vogue. And the 90s were just like in the toilet. And then it took a decade for the 90s for those high schoolers and college kids to get reminiscent for it.
Yeah.
And we're going through it now with with 2000s era stuff, and it's really weird
Sure.
to me.
Well, I agree. It's like every band sort of has its heyday, and then they're faced with like, oh, this is coming to an end.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
Right. What do we do?
And they kind of disappear for 10 years or ish.
Right. And then reminiscent people that remember this as their music are of an age where they have money to buy the $40 t-shirt and go to shows again. They want to enjoy it with their spouse or whatever. And so that's what's going on now. And that darn Creed cruise, I was like, I don't know if people are going to want to go to this. I haven't heard from Creed in ages, but when they reformed, that Creed cruise 1 sold out in 24 hours, like 16 hours it was sold out.
Yeah.
So they threw on a second week for another one that sold out as well. And then so now it's going again this year. Marcy Playground's playing on that one this year.
Which you also are playing with them off and on, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of like the pinch hitter. I'm sort of like the sub for Dylan when he has stuff, with his work. He works for NPR in New York, the bass player for Marcy Playground. So it's probably been like, I don't know, almost 7 years or 8 years now. So
you have Dishwalla occasionally with Marcy. Are there any other bands like that you're working with?
No. That's pretty much it. For the last, since that first, I think we had a tour. Was Dishwalla got asked to do one with Fuel? Was it just Fuel and us and Marcy Playground, or was there another? I can't even remember. We get thrown onto so many of these package tours with other bands from the era that in my mind it starts to kind of like morph together.
Yeah.
But at any rate, there was a point where Dylan needed a substitute on that show, so I'd play the Dishwalla show, or I can't remember even the order, but and then I'd play for Marcy Playground, change basses at least or something, so it looks slightly different.
Wear a different hat.
I have a different hat. Change my shirt. Maybe people won't notice.
You're double dipping.
Yeah, so that was fun.
That's nice.
But I've grown to love those guys. We've had some like last year we were out with Everclear and Jimmy's Chicken Shack, and that was a blast. It was a blast. They wanted to save some money, so they had the tour bus that go to KOA campgrounds instead of day rooms.
Yeah,
which you would think was like, you kind of like want some like a shower normally, but we camped with the tour bus.
I remember seeing pictures of you,
and we're barbecuing and singing songs around the fire, whatever. Like, it was a blast.
Yeah.
So
some of those campgrounds are really nice too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were literally in the Blue Ridge Mountains, like experiencing but I'm on tour at the same time. It was really cool.
That's really that sounds like a lot of fun. Speaking of Fuel, you're the one that put me in touch with Jeff Abercrombie.
Oh yeah.
Bass player from Fuel, and I've been tracking some drum stuff for him for a solo record that he's doing.
Right on.
Who he also lives here now.
Yeah, right up.
Have you actually got together with him?
No, I've talked to him on the phone because a buddy of mine's got a show in Las Vegas. That's this Millennium All Stars show. Steven's watching. If you guys ever check it out, it's pretty cool. But like, I think the one this month is Greg Camp, the guitar player from Smash Mouth, Kevin Cadogan, the guitar player from Third Eye Blind. And the hair metal guys have been doing this for years, but finally the 90s guys have gotten hip to it. Like, oh, we can do that. We can put an all-star band together and play each other's songs.
Right.
And so it's doing great,
What's that show
called? Down at Millennium All-Stars.
Oh, okay. Is that sort of like Raiding the Rock deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And and this stuff they've been doing in LA like for 30, 40 years probably,
And you've done that show?
Yeah, I've gone down and done it. Yeah. And it was a blast.
And
it was a guy from Sugar Ray, bass player from Sugar Ray, and me, guitar player from Goo Goo Dolls, guitar player from Third Eye Blind.
But did you have Jeff?
Oh, I had thank you. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the thing.
Come back.
That's what it was. I couldn't do one of them. I was
Yeah.
like, I got a hold of Jeff's number, and sure enough, he's like, yeah, I'll take the wife and the kids down, and we'll make a thing of it.
Yeah.
And so that worked out great.
Yeah,
A
very
super
cool.
nice guy. Yeah, and he was, you know, we share band drama stories and stuff. You know, it's like we all have them at this point,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to hear the Fuel stuff and.
Well, it's
talk
like
to these guys.
the
It's
time
so-
that you and I've spent
it's
together
similar
is,
but
yeah,
different, you know.
It's like the stories are so similar, the struggles and
Yes,
all
the
of
struggles
that.
are all the same.
You know, and when I first met Jeff and went over to his house, and it's like he's telling me all these things. It's like it's the same.
Yeah,
It's like you could switch locations and the names, but it's like it's really similar to your stories and
sure.
anything that I've experienced. You know, not
Yeah.
on the same level that you guys have, but
Yeah,
it's
but you know, I
love of the
saw
music.
Fuel in that era when he was playing. I can remember we had a show at Universal Studios Florida, and they played the night before. So let's go down and check out Fuel. You know, and they were right when they were peaking. That band was so dang good.
Yeah,
I swear, they were so good and way heavier than I thought they were going to be, and like way more like Rush than I thought they were going to be. It's like you really have to see a band live to get a feel for like where they're coming from.
Sure.
Sometimes,
yeah,
you know, it's interesting like that. You know, even when we toured with Sheryl Crow so many times, like back in the day, like a lot, and it's always like, wow, this is like nothing like the record. Like this is awesome. You know, there's not anything against her records are great too, but like it was just like on another level, and you
When
really
it's
see
live,
where the artist
yeah.
is coming from. Yeah,
Well, I'm sure you guys did do it too. You have songs that kind of morph into a little something different
Absolutely,
when you play it live. I played the song 1,000 times now. It's kind of lean this way or whatever, and
right.
Yeah, I think those things are really, really cool. All right, I want to get deeper into the. Well, let's see if I'm missing any comments.
I feel like we've totally ignored.
Yeah,
are we even on camera?
Yes, I don't. I really want to keep this interactive. So, hey, if you guys got questions for Scott, just
there's a ton of stuff on here. Scott, did you ever demo a piece of equipment to keep drummers from detuning your bass?
Oh,
that's it.
Oh, man, yeah, I've heard this story a couple times.
Well, I
yeah.
mean,
Somebody's got to mess with you.
Yeah. It's always like right before it's like a downbeat or something. James, the drummer, used to have to walk past me to get to the drum kit. And so he'd walk past and detune my bass real quick. And I'd be like, oh, crap, I gotta scramble to the tuner and get tuned back up. Thought that was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. I've never messed with anybody else's gear. I just thought I'd get punched in the face if I attempted something like that.
No one's going to punch James is the problem. Yeah.
I think one time we were getting ready to go out of town, you and I, and with Puzon, and show up at your house to pick you up, and you're taking care of last minute whatever, and your neighbor's house was for sale.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and grabbed their for sale sign out of the yard and put it in yours.
Awesome.
And you came out, and I'm looking at you like, when are you going to tell me? You're like, tell you what? Like, when are you going to tell me you're moving? Like, I'm not going to point to the side of the yard. That's about my extent of tomfoolery.
No.
But okay, so that's what James said. And yes, he moved to Virginia. Manny Santiago.
Morning.
Mark Grubert. Bass players always have an interesting perspective, and Scott's one of the best. Thanks for having him on, Fred.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, man. Phantom Eye Mike Jones, most underrated bassist ever. How do you feel about having that title, Scott? You're the most underrated.
I was having some argument the other day about somebody about the term underrated and overrated.
Yeah, and James is doing a whole thing of that on drummers.
Oh, that's what it was.
I think that's what it is.
That's what it was. It's just it's so misused all the time.
It is. Yeah.
Overrated is just a rude thing to say. Period. Because it's a stupid judgment anyway.
It is.
It's meaningless.
I did a show not long ago
But I
about.
think there are some people that are truly underrated, and my theory. I can't think if it's true for drummer. I mean, in the case of Journey, it's not, because Steve Smith is amazing.
Yeah.
But like, you know, Ross Valerie or U2, you know, with Adam Clayton, or the Eagles with either of the bass players. Like, as bass players, they're just, even within our community, maybe not talked about, but a lot of times it's the biggest bands in history.
Yeah.
Just the weirdest thing, you know.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it has to do with their parts being more simple, but I don't know why that is.
I was just talking to somebody on
Maybe they're
Sunday.
just so overly talked about because they're the biggest bands in the world that
Yeah.
we sort of like don't think about their abilities or something.
Well, I think Lars Ulrich from Metallica is really under attack a lot about being an overrated drummer, and he's terrible, and he's this and he's that. I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. That guy that's all he's ever done his entire life.
Yeah.
He never had to dig ditches, or, you know, he never
Absolutely
show up to a corporate job somewhere, or, you know, or
well, think about
any number
this
of things,
too.
but
when did this all start taking place? Like, they made a lot of records before people were like, Lars sucks. Nobody was saying that.
No.
Even like through, you know, Black and Justice for All. Nobody was on this Lars kick until it became this mass social media. This is just the way we comment about him.
It became
idiotic.
Like,
it's just like,
yeah, I agree. It became popular to kind of hate on him.
Yeah.
For no legitimate reason, really.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
Totally.
And you know, when I think any number of drummers could play Metallica drum parts, but you can't replace that guy's personality. You can't replace the chemistry that he and James Hetfield have, and
yeah,
you know,
it just wouldn't have happened without those guys. It's just like Zeppelin or any of these bands. Yeah. It's such an amalgam of just those people in a room that came up with this. And so it just wouldn't have necessarily happened the way that we love it, or it happened at all. You know,
I think it's
people don't take that into consideration, that this might not have happened without that guy that you're dissing.
Exactly.
Like the Beatles or whatever.
Yeah,
like
bagging on Ringo, or
yeah,
you're just like, really? These guys are trailblazers in their field.
Right.
They laid the path that you're now pissing on, kind of, you know. It's like, I don't get it. And then, you know, if people ask, like, if you were to put take your favorite bass player, favorite drummer, and form a band, would it work?
It usually doesn't.
No.
And when they do these things, it's usually kind of like the music is not as good.
No,
it got a bunch of great players, but
yeah, it doesn't mean the chemistry's there. Or I mean, there's a number of things that could get in the way of that working. But let's see, what else are we missing here?
Ross Valerie had such melodic parts on certain songs. Absolutely, truly underrated. I think he is.
Now, is that the bass player for Journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's which I can't think of the names of the guys in Duran Duran off the top of my head. Who's the bass player for Duran? Not
John Taylor.
John Taylor is one of those guys I think is great.
But John Taylor, at least like within our community, he's been on the cover of Bass Player numerous times in all these magazines. Yeah. He's won Bass Player of the Year or of the Century or whatever. Like he is actually recognized.
Okay.
But the guys that are in huge bands that are not recognized is what I trip out on.
Yeah. And the bass player from Duran Duran too is like, did I just say Duran Duran?
Yeah.
I meant In Excess.
Oh yeah.
Both those bands.
Gary Beers, yeah.
Just like,
right.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
You actually really listened to that guy play bass?
Yeah, he's a monster player.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But they don't seem to surface up in conversation very often.
No.
James says Lars became the Nickelback of social media, starting with Saint Anger.
Right.
Yeah, that awful snare drum sound.
Yeah.
That was a little weird. I think it was weird for everybody. I don't Bob Rock. How did Bob Rock let that happen?
I don't know, especially when it's likely a sample anyway, like, from the Black Album forward, it's all, either augmented snare drum with a sample or just a sample.
Yeah.
So somebody made a choice.
Well, then there was all those reels that popped up with drummers playing a Metallica song, but they're banging on a beer keg to get that kang, kang, kang kind of sound. Oh, man.
I don't know, when you think about that era, like, even like, what was it? I guess it was 96. So when we won that Billboard Award and it was against Metallica, what record is that? Load or something like that? Or Loaded?
They had Load and Reload.
It
was kind of like a double.
One of those.
Yeah.
And there was no guitar solos on it.
Right.
That was the big hole.
Yeah.
There's
no guitar solos on anybody's song.
The only Metallica record with no guitar solos. But it was the era of, like, they needed to get on alternative radio because there was no place for them. There was no home for Metallica at radio. Yeah. So they needed to, like, sort of morph this thing they do into 1996 somehow. And, and the fans didn't dig it either. It was just like, I mean, maybe in retrospect, it's okay now, but at the time the fans were upset by it.
Right.
I can't remember my point where I was going with this about Metallica. Oh yeah, just that they were chasing a sound. And when I think about that era and the corn snare, like piccolo, like super
that
cranked
high pitched,
So, or 311 in some of these bands, so they were probably chasing something that was going on stylistically at the time.
I hadn't thought about that.
Production-wise, that's a lot of what, from that Load era forward, they've just been sort of chasing production styles and stuff, it seems like.
Yeah. I haven't been to a Metallica concert since probably about that same time.
Yeah.
I thought the concert was great, but they really leaned on their back catalog more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, they want to keep your fans happy.
Yeah. They want to hear stuff from Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets. I'm starting to guess at album titles. But Injustice for All.
I mean, I wasn't a big metalhead, but I do remember when Master of Puppets came out, and I had it on a cassette tape, and this is the heaviest thing I have ever heard in my life. Like, this is so gnarly. Like,
right.
It's just crazy to think of, and you listen to it now, and it's almost funny to think about that.
Like, but this used to be really, really crushing your skull.
Crushing. But I can remember being in elementary school and hearing Hot Blooded by Foreigner and going, it's physically impossible to rock any harder than what is going on Hot Blooded. Yeah. Like, this is the heaviest thing I've ever heard.
I felt that way when Pour Some Sugar on Me came out.
Yeah.
It was like, on the radio, it sounded
huge.
And then I think
James Harrison's biggest qualm ever is like the drum sound, and Hannah's like trying to play that song. It's like, dude, like a doom doom cat. It's like as dry as possible. It's like, come on, sound man, like give it some love.
That snare is supposed to sound like it's in the Grand Canyon.
Exactly. just crank it for that song and turn it down. It's not that hard.
Yeah. I remember. I think when I heard Pour Some Sugar on Me on the radio, I was like, oh my gosh. And then when I heard Youth Gone Wild from Skid Row come on, I was like, this is even heavier. This is like, it almost felt like somebody's pushing your shoulders down. It's like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you look back at it, you're like, it's not as, because there's just always the next thing that's tuning lower and tuning lower and tuning lower. And
right.
And got to get rid of these pop-up things. I got to shut that feature off. All right, so I want to ask you about kind of your mindset on just your attitude towards music.
Let me see if the band is telling me to.
Oh.
Okay. No.
I don't have any messages that I'm aware
I don't
of.
either.
Oh my God.
I figure somebody's giving me crap on the phone.
So the producer, I wish I would have known this sooner. Sounds like your microphones aren't picking up that it's the computer, no low end. No, I have it on the right setting. Yeah, but that was an hour ago.
Oh, jeez. Sorry if there's no bottom on the microphone, guys.
I'm not a audio master. I'm trying to become one. But
That's why you got her.
I know. She should have knocked on the door or something. Just came in and
yeah.
She's failing today.
It's all good.
I'll pay for that comment later. I want to get in the mindset of you as a bass player. I know just musically playing with you how tight that is and how great that feels to play with a bass player that's just so locked in with drums. So when you're writing songs and recording songs for original stuff, Midline had you play that song Ghost with us, which is just so perfect. Or learning songs to play with a cover band gig or something. Like how do I want to say this? How do you play so great all the time? I just want to know, like, what's your mindset in learning songs or writing songs, like from a bass perspective? Like, what are you listening for in those songs? And like, how close do you want to replicate cover songs and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Did I make complete nonsense out of that question?
It's like 3 questions.
Okay. Well, you can answer them in order. That's just how I am.
Well, from a writing context, like, I never write on the bass guitar. Few people do.
Uh-huh.
I'm always on acoustic guitar or keyboards for the most part. But when it comes time to lay bass on new tracks and stuff, I really don't think about it. It's really just comes down to what the song dictates.
Mm-hmm.
But a few things I've learned over the years, put in situations where if it's a session where I don't know the material, where I go to the studio that day and I don't know what I'm facing, if you start with the simplest idea and you mentally just tell yourself, I'm just going to start with the simplest idea, and then I'm going to let loose. Once I kind of got a feel for where everything's at, what I can do with it, then I'm really going to kind of like be able to express myself.
Sure.
9 times out of 10, that first thing where you just said to yourself, but I'm going to start with the simplest idea, that's what ends up on the record. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I swear to you, like, it's usually that's just what the song needed, was your simplest idea. And the cool thing about the simplest idea is that it actually seems to pop more in the mix when it's concise.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more space or whatever. But I can, one of the great learning lessons of making that first Dishwalla record with Phil Nicolo when we did it in end of 94, is there was a song on the record that it's just the rhythm section we were just playing too much between George and I. He's like, okay, so what I want you to do is take about half the notes that you're playing, and take those notes that you're playing. I want you to take that in half, and then I want you to divide that in half again.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, there'd be no notes, right?
It's just
if I take 50%
notes.
and the other 50%, then I've got no notes. He's like, no. So my math was flawed, but at any rate, he was completely the right answer. And it was just in that particular song, it's sort of a, sometimes you play locked with the kick drum.
Yeah.
Other times you're displaced with it, and you're playing a syncopated groove, whatever. It's whatever the song needs, but that song needed to be with the kick drum, and and then open it up a little bit more at the eighth notes or something in the chorus. But it was that kind of groove, and it just made it so stanky and so solid just to play it with the kick. And I was like, that was exactly what it needed. And I've just, that experience, I've just applied it along there was another great experience in that record too, was, he had this session player that was the bass player for Bon Jovi that always did work in Phil's studio. And this cat, Phil says to me, I need you to play all hard notes or all soft, but stop with all the dynamics,
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was I had been told prior by local level engineers, well, when you're recording, you want to use as much dynamics as possible so it really sounds quiet or it really sounds loud. But for bass, this is not the case at all.
Yeah.
Like the more level you can play and more consistent you can play, the less they need to compress you and the better sound you're going to get. So he's like, when we were talking about Hugh McDonald, when Hugh comes in here, he just looks at the VU meter. And we don't even need to compress him. He just watches the meter and makes sure he's in the zone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went through life thinking that's, something he did. Back about 5 years ago, I got a chance to talk to him, and I asked him, like, so Phil says you used to look at the meter and they didn't even need to compress you. He's like, I never did that. In back east, they just are always like busting your balls. That's what they always say.
Yeah.
Like, just busting your balls. Anyway, so Phil's just totally making stuff up.
Just to get you to think a certain way, probably.
Exactly.
Right.
And it totally worked. And so little lessons you pick up. So, but yeah, simplest idea first, branch out from there. And, I just, I always go for a clean sound,
Mm-hmm.
and live engineers in particular seem to like that. Whereas, we're talking about like fine details here, but like round wound strings versus flat wound strings. Flat wounds sound great, and they're from an era, that sound, and it still sounds amazing on record, but live, they just sound kind of muddy to me. So the feedback, I listen to a lot of feedback from engineers.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the studio or live, I just listen to them. I just want them to be happy.
Right.
I'm typically happy. I'm like super like easy to please. So tonally,
I know when you recorded bass for Ghost for us, and I sent that off to Chris Collier to get mixed, and I called him on the phone because my whole reason was I wanted feedback. Like, okay, you're working with recording Korn and Whitesnake and all, George Lynch and all of those kind of guys. And I said, I want feedback on the tracks I'm providing. Like if I just have doing it ourselves, I just wanted somebody else's perspective. And he was really, really happy with the drum tracks. He gave me some tips on like improving how the ride cymbal was mic'd, but everything else being okay. But he goes, I got to tell you, that's the best bass track I've ever had to work with. Like, almost had to do nothing to it really to. So I think all your years of experience and different people you work for is made that possible.
And remote tracking is its own unique thing because it's like depending on who you're working with and the budget involved, the time involved, do you process in advance before you send the files to the engineer? Or do you leave it dry?
Yeah.
And so my gut feeling on that particular song was I did process it in advance with how I felt it should sound in the mix. So basically you could pull the fader up and it was just going to sound like a record.
And I think that's what he did.
Yeah. So, but it just depends. I didn't know what I was walking into with him. So I took a chance.
Yeah.
And typically, like if you don't know what you're walking into, you should lay back on the side of, caution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And deliver it kind of dry, but then you want to like wow them when they pull it up in the mix as well. So it's a tough call. You can always send both.
Did that.
You can do both too. You can send dry, and this is how I would approach it. Throw this up in the mix if you like it, great. If not, here's the dry track.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Well, I guess when you're doing a remote recording, whoever you're working for, how do you want this?
Right.
I do the same thing. What kind of snare sound do they want? Do you want mixed drum tracks sent to you, or do you want just,
and a lot of that's experienced too, because like there's been times where I have had session stuff through Sound Better where they accidentally have sent me the track of another session player that they've hired. It didn't work out. So they came to me. And so I've gotten the chance to hear their track. And so you're going into it knowing what they probably didn't like. So
you're like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go over here and have my own take on it. That's maybe something totally different.
Let's see, catch up on a couple of these comments here, because I want to get back to like your approach for learning cover material. Jared Anthony says, same thing with a vocal melody. Once you open your mind and let it flow, the first idea that busts through is the one that sticks.
Yep, absolutely. And depending, Jared's a great singer. Sometimes you get a great singer that can like overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And I once heard a story about Christina Aguilera, and she went in for a new song, and she's there with the songwriters and went in to track it, and she's doing all these riffs and all this stuff, and just going off on it, and the producer's just like
vocal flexing.
Yeah, and she was having fun with it, and the producer's like, you know what, the melody alone is strong enough on this song. Let's get that down. And had to it was Christina Aguilera. I think it was like Dave Pensado was talking about that. And so just the melody is strong enough. Keep it simple. Stays more memorable that way. And then live, you do whatever the heck you want. Have fun with it.
Sure. James says another underrated bass player is Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith.
100%. Yep, he's up there. I totally agree.
Scott is one of the best at playing bass with the pick. He makes musical adjustments to still blend. How often do you play with the pick?
About half the time.
About half the time.
Yeah.
You did that Tears for Fears cover with us, and some snotty commenter was like, turn his nose up at it because you're using a pick to get a certain sound.
It's just like, come on, man. And then you know what? So the backstory on that, there's a bass player named Pino Palladino that played on that Tears for Fears song, and he's known for playing a fretless with his fingers. I watched a live video of Tears for Fears in that era playing that song. The bass player on the road is playing it with a pick. So it makes me wonder if that's, that intro thing that actually is maybe not even him. It might even been a keyboard.
A keyboard bass,
Yeah, I think it actually is.
So, but I think
that's trying to take 3 tracks and put them into one.
Yeah.
For one thing.
That was the same for me with the drum parts. Like,
oh right, yeah, all the synthetic
how much of this stuff is programmed, how much this is somebody using digital drums maybe, and then the Phil Collins drumming part. It's like when I do those collab covers, or even when I just was doing drum covers all the time, I'm like, there's obvious stuff that's been overdubbed.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun to take those parts and try to
replicate.
How much can I do on my own to cover all these pieces?
Right.
And maybe drop certain things out to accommodate.
I think that's really the cool approach, and that's the fun stuff for a drummer. When we had that gig with Walfredo Reyes here in town back a few years ago, and he talks about it in his clinics and stuff too, but he was telling, I think I may have even asked him to play like one of that Steve Winwood hit, Back in the High Life, that groove and stuff. And he's like, a lot of those songs, was Drum Machine on the record.
Right.
And they didn't have budget for a percussionist as well for a lot of it to play some of the percussion stuff. So he just got good at doing the backbeat and all the percussion stuff on the kit and making it work, and just doing it all. So,
I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years through like John Klein and Gary. But I asked Walfredo, I said, are you playing with a click? He's like, oh yeah, definitely playing with a click. Cause they have a lot of Chicago songs they're playing with tracks.
Yeah.
They got horns doubled or whatever. But I think he told everybody in the band, look, if we don't play with the click, we're going to, this whole thing goes off the rails.
Right.
Like it's gotta. So are you a fan of the click? Does Dishwalla use a click live?
Never has. But for recording, when it makes sense, we're just sort of like, we're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the recordings were with a click, but live never. Even with loops and stuff, it's always been human controlled. Whether it was George triggering the loop on a 1, if he has a loop assigned to a pad or something, you'd have that pad linked up to one of our samplers. or these days the laptop. But it would be George triggering it. But for the last, like, I don't know how long, Jim, the keyboard player, just hits it on the one, so George doesn't have to, because
Gotcha.
it really kind of messed him up. I think hitting that Roland like static, like conk,
like a hard rubber pad.
Yeah.
Oh, those are brutal on your hands
ones back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they just have no give at all.
They don't. It's like hitting a tabletop.
Right.
Repeatedly over and over and over.
I mean, it has a like thin piece of rubber on it, but it was like kank, like if yeah, those were horrible. So yeah, never. And yeah, so aside from with you and maybe a couple other things, I don't really have a whole lot of reference point for Click Live.
Mm-hmm.
But the U2 show, when I was doing tribute stuff, that is all to Click.
I did that one U2 show with you.
Yeah. A click and instructions.
Yeah.
Chorus
2, 3, 4.
Chorus 2, 3, 4. Keep everybody on track.
Oh, James is commenting on the Tears for Fears Woman in Chains. He said Fred the Big Drum Fill.
It's Phil Collins.
Till the end is Phil Collins. Yeah. And then the rest of the song is all programmed. Okay,
right.
So yeah.
Right.
Just
put some ambient drums on there.
I this has nothing to do with us, but just that song in particular is such a great song, and of course Phil Collins.
It's a masterpiece, yeah.
But I saw an interview with Roland and Kurt. They were talking about that song, and In the Air Tonight had all that success because of the
yeah,
you know, and they're like, we need something like that to stand out. So they had Phil Collins come and play on that song, and they're like, we want another In the Air Tonight.
Right.
So he's like, well, I can't play the same drum fill, but
yeah,
he recorded a bunch of stuff for them to pick and choose from. But
wow.
It was really fun learning that song and trying to copy that.
Yeah. I mean, I always appreciate, covers that are like that are like a lofty goal. Like if somebody wants to do that or Queen or anything that's like, even Zeppelin or stuff that's a little harder to reach for, that you have to push for a little bit. And that thing vocally from Mary was incredible. And yeah, the music's amazing on it. I love that stuff. I love Tears for Fears.
That's one of my favorite collab covers I've been part of doing. Of course, anytime playing with you is so great anyway. When you're learning, I keep trying to get this question out there. When you're learning cover material, how concerned are you about having the part right? And not only that, my questions are always multiple answer. Like when you're learning songs, are you really aware of like the drums do this, the guitar does this, like what the other instrumentation is in the song?
I'm hyper aware of the other instruments to a point where it annoys people. Because I hate that sometimes I come off like, in that situation that I know what their other people's gig is too. Yeah. But I'm so in tune with that there's reasons why the groove is working a certain way or something. But yeah, I usually feel it if a kick is off or something like that, or the hi-hat is not quite right. Fills I don't care about. It's just general stuff though, but I'm not really particular about exactly right, but just pretty close. And I'm really big on the essence of what they were going for. So if I am reaching for a fill or I am going to expand on something, it's how they would have done it. Yeah. So it feels like it was, because even when we used to do the R&B gig together, it was like I'd play off a lot of stuff and people just, figured that was on the record a lot of time, even though it was expanding on an idea or something.
I think when I first started learning, because in 92, I went on the road with a band doing covers, and I was really only paying attention to the drum parts. And even then, I wasn't really replicating them exactly how they should be until, I don't even remember what song it was, but the bass player in the band came up to me. He's like, don't play the kick drum unless the bass is playing. And that was like, first of all, your ego block goes up.
Right.
Like, how dare you tell me what to do, kind of thing. But then I listen, I'm like, he's 100% right. And so then that idea got planted in my head. I'm like, Oh,
Right.
like my awareness just went up like huge. And
Huh.
so then over the years, like, as I was learning stuff, I'm like, I know what the bass player's doing. I know
Right.
what the vocalists are doing.
Yeah.
And how the vocals are phrased. Like over the years, I became more and more and more and more immersed in like what the vocal does. What am I doing drumming wise that can support the vocal? I
Right.
never really thought of it in those terms.
Absolutely.
And just like, what am I doing from a supportive role rather than, oh, I have this cool drum fill. I gotta find a home for it.
Right.
Well, maybe there is no home for it.
That's so true for any music, whatever instrument that you play.
Take half the notes out and then another half.
Yeah. And just don't step on the vocal.
Yeah.
When the vocal's happening.
Yeah.
I usually don't like it when there's crashes, like during phrases. Like the longer you can go without a crash cymbal, like, is great. I always think I was watching something with Jeff Porcaro the other day. I'm like obsessed with always watching whatever Jeff Porcaro comes up.
Sure.
But like the length of time he went before throwing a crash cymbal, it just being such a great groove underneath, and that was enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's stylistically some. I think with midline, I play a lot of cymbals, but with Cliff, I don't play a lot of cymbals.
Yeah.
Well, I stay on the hi-hat most of the time.
Right. But I think in hard rock, like the crash cymbal is almost like the distortion pedal for guitar or something. It's just like
I'll ride a crash like it's
it's just the gas pedal.
Yeah,
it's just like
exactly.
That's the throttle.
Michelle says we need good drums.
Yes, I've been doing. So Michelle and our friend Todd Dunnigan, they've got a project called True Swans. Yeah. And so I've done a couple tracks with these guys, and it's super cool stuff. And they're big fans of Taxi. For those of you guys that are aware of what Taxi does, it's a service that gets requests from film and TV and libraries that need specific tracks, and you can write a track for them.
They're having a lot of success with that right now.
Well, they're good at writing stuff super quickly.
Yeah.
And that's the key with Taxi, I've found, is that if you've got a lot of songs in the bag, like that you think you could fit into different categories, it might work. But if you're someone that's just got a few songs, like it's not going to be a good call for you unless you can write quickly to whatever the request is.
I think I talked to Todd about this sometime in the last year, is that he and Michelle have a schedule. Like, we're writing every day from, Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. Like they have like a work schedule to what they do. And because of that focus, they're getting those placements and signing their music.
That's so cool. Cool. There's a quote from Stephen King that's like that inspiration is a luxury for the novice. The rest of us have to go to work.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you can't just sit around and wait for inspiration.
Yeah. I
mean, you could, but you really just it's just a muscle, and you just have to do it every day with songwriting. You got to write 100 songs to get a good one, and it's hard to self-edit and get rid of songs. But we've been in that situation that if you want things to move forward, sometimes you have to ditch what you're doing and shift gears and do what is communicating with people, because this is all communication, what we're talking about with songs. It's all this is. And if people aren't responding, then you got to really take a step back and ask yourself, am I willing to kind of change stylistically, or what am I willing to part with from what I've been doing to make it work so that my songs are going to communicate with people? Because I don't understand why. I mean, I don't want to sound harsh, but like there's a lot of just so many really talented people, I feel like, here, even locally, or in young artists like that I've become friends with, like, through the internet or whatever.
Yeah.
And they just bang their head against the wall for years and years and years. And it just doesn't have to be that hard, but it does take a little bit of sacrifice. And meaning from your original plan
Yeah.
if it's just not working. But ultimately, like, this is all just pop music,
Mhm.
whether it's country or metal or alternative. It's
Yeah.
all just this pop music idiom.
Sure.
And the songs need to communicate, so we need to do what we can do to reach people.
Michelle says we work every day. Yeah, I figured I knew I was close on that. Yeah, and they have a schedule. I gotta shut this feature off on my stupid computer. Yeah, because they're so focused, they're making that happen. It's always people who are older that always have this. Well, when I was younger, I should have done these things. Like, I really wish that. I think, well, the internet makes people more accessible, but where I am currently with my state of where I am with music, with teaching and doing session work and playing, and the people that I've met as a result of all of that, I really wish I would have seeked out advice from people who knew way more about everything than I did when I was younger. Like, I think the outcome would have been completely different. And then I live in that danger zone of the shoulda, woulda, coulda thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but I'm really thankful now where I am with my life and what I'm doing, and having people like yourself around to go, hey, what do you think about this? And you can go, well, thumbs up or thumbs down, or and just having a lot of Scot Alexanders in my life. It's awesome. John Klein says, good morning, Scott and Fred.
Hey, buddy.
There he is. I will see John early this afternoon.
I mean, and to what you just said, I think we all as musicians feel the same way.
Yeah.
There's going to be things that down the road you may have wished you had done, but you got to look at the rest of your life as well. Like, there has to be this balance. Otherwise you get this just sort of like empty thing at the end. And you've been great at, managing the family and everything, and being able to do what you love. And I think that's really when you start to like hit the golden sort of like zone.
Yeah.
Right. And certainly, like, when I left Dishwalla in 2005, had I gone to Nashville, or as some of my friends were saying, why don't you come down to LA, we can get you to work, I was just emotionally,
we were drained.
I was just emotionally drained of music. I just needed a break.
Yeah.
I needed to do something different. And focusing on the family was 100% the right thing to do. And I don't regret it at all. But, if I didn't care, then, if it was just purely a music mindset, then I probably made the wrong call. But in terms of my life, it was the right call.
Yeah. In 2009 is when, I think it was 2009. I told the guys at Midline, I said, tapping out, because the band started in 1990, and here it is 2009. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I can't do this. Let's do our LA run because we're going to be a band.
Yeah.
We're already a band. I've been throwing money at this for the better part of my life, and nothing's happened. And I have kids and a wife and a mortgage and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I go on the road, or I buy diapers and groceries, And so I was like, so I was going to quit music, and that lasted about 48 hours. And Mary's like, you're an idiot. You just got to focus differently on what you're doing.
Right.
And so that was kind of like the one little thing that needed to be said. And then, so I just kind of reevaluated like the process of how all of this works.
Right.
And then seeking advice from people who knew more, and it's been a slow climb on that, but it's now here I am.
Right.
And it feels great.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with us. We've been operating for the last 20 years with on our own terms.
Yeah.
Doing one-offs through the year. For the most part, they are like 90s package shows, or they're soft ticket, meaning they're not reliant upon ticket sales. That's just what our agent kind of specializes in. So they're kind of low pressure, see the guys, go out to dinner, like hang out. It's like, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to Santa Barbara this week to write some new songs and do some recording and stuff. Maybe run the set a few times for our one-offs this year. Go down on Thursday.
Are you the only one in the band that doesn't live in the same city?
No, the keyboard player lives up Northern California.
Okay.
Yeah. So the singer, drummer, guitar player in Santa Barbara.
Okay. So,
but they're busy guys.
Yeah.
So they hardly see each other.
I was just curious, like with the songwriting process, you guys start just emailing files back and forth. Here's an idea. Here's an idea.
It has gone that way a lot over the last, several years. But I think at first we try to just like, everybody just sort of brings their own ideas and we're just going to jam on this stuff and lay it down and see what we got. And then from there, we start kind of sending the files to each other and developing on our own at home.
Yeah.
And that's like that last single, Alive.
Oh yeah.
That's totally how that came out. I had a couple loops going on my computer, maybe a chord progression. And I went down there, we jammed on it and just did it in an afternoon. Sent files.
Is that a song you also play guitar on? Is that the same?
I only play guitar on it. I don't play bass on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there bass on that song?
Yeah, there's just a mode.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just
okay.
a synthesizer.
I was trying to remember the video. You're playing guitar in that video, right?
Yeah, it's weird. It's fun for me. I'm like, yeah, I'm rocking. I love it. So that's such a frustrating drummer and guitar player. Awesome.
Your video for Alive was kind of the spark for when Midline covered Mailman.
Right. Yeah.
Man, you're racing against that sun setting like right now.
Yes.
It's like
otherwise the shots look totally different. And like Justin's single shots of him singing the vocal, you can tell the sun is just about down by the time Justin all his close-up shots, but it still works.
Yeah.
But you've really you're up against the clock. Yeah.
We got out there and got set up and kind of waiting for the light in the sky to change.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that happened, it was like, we got really limited time to get X number of shots done. Or it's just not going to make sense.
Right.
Might as well be in the middle of the night at that point.
Yeah. And it's like an all-day event because you got to do all the prep in advance.
Yeah.
With their set and everything or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Ours was just standing on this cement disc, with graffiti on it.
Yeah. It
just looked cool.
It looked really cool. Yeah.
But it was difficult to get up there and get gear up there, like guitar amps on top of this structure and stuff.
How high up was that thing?
It
looks like it's way up there.
So there are sections of it where it's probably 10, 15 feet, 12 feet off the ground. But then there's one area where there's only about 4 feet off the ground.
Okay.
Where you can hop up there. So we had to put guitar amps just up on there and climb on up. Maybe we had a ladder or something. I don't remember. Yes, that was cool. But anyway, I said to the guys too, I'm like, I had to sell them on doing a video. It was like, dude, how many more opportunities in life are we going to have to do this?
Yeah.
And people want to see us. Let's just do a video. Don't overthink it. Let's just do it, And actually, Justin had the picture of that thing up there. I remember from partying up there back when I was a teenager, but it's up on the hills above Santa Barbara, that structure.
Did you have to arrange permission to use it or you just did it?
We just did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. have some BLM person show up.
It could have happened. Probably some permit.
What are you guys doing?
We probably need to have a permit, but we didn't do it.
So what's on deck this year for Dishwalla?
I think probably like more of the same kind of stuff. I mean, it's been a few years since we had a single, so maybe out of going down there this week, maybe we come out of it with a new single to promote. So maybe we've got a new single out, but a lot more one-offs. We're playing Fremont Street in July on 4th of July weekend, so that'll be crazy. So that's with 9 days. Story of a Girl was their big song. I love those guys. So, but yeah, just a bunch more one-offs we're doing and keep this party going as long as we can, as long as people want to come see us.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Normally, I start this show off with the goofy holidays of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We just jumped right into storytelling, which
Yeah,
I love. But so my buddy Rick Stojak, who teaches drum lessons down in San Diego, I was talking to him for about an hour yesterday, and been bouncing off teaching ideas and stuff and off of each other, and he said, what's the goofy holiday for tomorrow? And I said, I haven't even looked yet. So while I was looking,
there is one.
Yeah. So today is National Sloppy Joe Day.
Oh.
And we started, I said that, and we immediately started reminiscing about, like, you knew which day of the week it was in elementary school by the menu. Mm-hmm. Like, pizza was on Friday. It was like, it's Sloppy Joe Tuesday. We just suddenly just went down that trail, and I was like, I can't tell you the last time I had a Sloppy Joe.
That's funny you say that, because my wife still makes them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we still have them. Maybe like once every 3 months or something, but yeah, she still
does. You need to give me Shelly's phone number.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not a huge fan. I never have been. I don't know if it's the name of them or what, but even when, elementary school, it was not a fan.
Well, it depends. So I've had it before. It was like super runny and lots of onions or something in there. I'm like, oh man, and then like hamburger buns just completely soaking wet. It's like, okay, that sucks. Yeah. It's a little drier and meaty.
No, Shelly does them up good. I mean, in our one kid that's still at home, he digs them. So once every few months we probably do them.
Yeah. Mary,
I'm gonna tell her tonight's Sloppy
Joe Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay.
Just should have that, and then it's National Awkward Moment Day. I'm pretty good at that.
An awkward pause.
Moment Day. Dude, we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
Really? Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, you guys.
No,
if there's
that's fine.
anyone still listening, we apologize.
There's 7 people still here at the moment. Wow. That's totally cool that you hung out this long.
Well, I just think it's cool that we haven't looked at any questions. We haven't had any clue what the heck we're talking about.
That's what I like about my lack of format, I guess, is a format.
So Fred has questions there, but there's no way that he'd be able to read it in time for it to
No. I think I just naturally went through some of what I wanted to ask anyway. Yeah. I do write stuff down. I have this whole notebook of things that I want to make sure. Oh, let's make sure I talk about this or that. But having guests on now, that was because I've done this for a little over 2 years and just started having guests.
I think you can start doing them remote too.
Yeah.
I think having a Zoom part of your screen or something like that.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
I think that would be super cool.
Send an email and because I want to have Harrison on.
Yeah, I was gonna say have James on here.
Yeah.
Have Michelle on here.
Definitely.
Or maybe Michelle and Todd's split screen or something.
Yeah, because she's up in Canada.
Yeah. Just have them both on.
I have a whole list of people I want to get on here, and Todd and Michelle are in that group. But I also have. I was looking through. It was like
you should get Abercrombie on here too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've already talked to him.
I want to hear his stories.
Doing that, and it's funny because it's the Drummergy Podcast now, and it's like the culmination. Like I'm really excited about drums, and but it's not always just drum related. And I started going through my list of people I want to have on. There's so many bass players. Mm-hmm. It's just like that rhythm section connection.
Yeah, it's important to talk about for drummers. I think it's a key part of the whole thing is the ensemble and how you're approaching that, right?
I don't want to get too nerdy about like talking about gear, and I think that's been done. I like the storytelling and getting into the nuts and bolts of that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny, as far as like I did all those gear demos, but I'm really not such a gear guy. I kind of don't care at this point. It's just been so long. Like I've been in gear for so many years now that people are just finding out about stuff, through social media and stuff. And it was like, crap that I was dealing with 30 years ago. So it's just, I don't know.
For me,
I'm a little over it.
Yeah, for me, I've never been like super into gear. Like I just found what worked for me and what I liked and what looked good, what felt good, what sounded good, and I just like I have a very narrow view of that. Where I have other drummer friends that are like trying this cymbal and this cymbal. They'll buy a cymbal and play it and return it. They'll buy another cymbal and play it and return it. I'm like, just give me something that makes a crash sound.
Right.
This one's higher pitched, this one's lower pitched.
Yeah.
I know where they are on my kit, and I can feel like the progression of the music and go, oh, this higher pitched crash is going to feel better on something that's ascending, and this lower one's going to feel good to just.
I think the trap that you fall into is this like, but this darker one's going to be great for this project, and if I use it in the studio, that's going to sound killer. I mean, you think about the different things that you do, and you could just buy cymbals all day or snare drums. Some guys, and buy snare drums all day long because one, it doesn't work for everything, or maybe it does, but in your mind you want a different vibe for a particular thing, and that's what being an artist is part of the fun. Different colors to paint with.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've got I think like 5 snare drums, but there's one that I use like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
The other ones I have to dust occasionally. It's just.
George is the same way, and it's the snare that he made.
Oh, really?
This is the best sounding one he has.
Yeah,
is the one that he made. So that's the one that comes out all the time.
Yeah, I already went through my phase of this size drumstick and this brand drumstick, and just landed to where I was, and just planted my roots on that, and just keep going. And it's just like I don't experiment that much.
No, I don't either. And I have gotten a little bit more particular about minor details though as I'm getting older. Action and the texture of the strings and like there's little things that I'm just like starting to like being more in tune with, that things that just bother me a little bit more than they used to, because when you're young and you're playing, you're just happy to have strings.
Exactly.
You're happy to have gear that works.
Yeah.
And you don't care. It's just like you just rock out on it. But as you get older, I like lighter instruments now. I used to not even think about it. You give me the heaviest thing,
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy to have heavy instruments now.
I can understand that. I can understand that.
Why work hard?
Yeah, even with midline, because I play a bigger kit with midline, and if we play a show, I start looking at it like, do I really need all this? It's like I only play those 2 drums in one song.
Yeah.
I guess I'm bringing them anyway. But then with like a lot of stuff I do with Cliff, it's just kick, snare, hat. I don't need anything else. I'm just keeping time.
Quick setup, quick tear down.
Yeah, I actually added a splash cymbal to the mix just to have something similar to a crash cymbal or whatever. But a lot of the stuff I play with him is just that.
Yeah.
And it's easy to,
I think that's cool.
And even in then, I'm like, I got to move 3 drums.
Right. Yeah. I think it's cool.
Is there a house kit?
It speaks volumes that you can actually that you can make it work.
Yeah.
That you can make it work with less.
Yeah.
I think there's this Peter Gabriel record. I think it's his first Peter Gabriel record. And I forget what session drummer it is, but Gabriel didn't want any cymbals.
Right. Yeah.
So having to play the drums and like, oh my gosh, like having to rethink things. But the cool thing about that was, and we've done it with Sylvia Massey as well, is the amount of compression that you're able to put on those drums as a result of that, because the cymbals otherwise just go
right. Yeah.
If you take that out of the equation, your drums are just huge. You're able to get a huge snare sound and the toms especially as well.
I covered Heavy from Collective Soul as a drum cover a couple years ago.
I remember that, yeah.
And a lot of people thought it was really cool, but then I had the elitists that came along, like, there's no crash cymbals in this song. There's no ride cymbal in this song. I'm like, I know.
Right.
I know there aren't.
Well, you could also be more elitist back and say, you know what? It's an Alesis SR16 drum machine on the whole first record. Yeah, so sorry. There's not even a drummer on the song. So you're having to
Yeah, and then I can go back and find a video of them playing that live, and guess what?
Of course.
There's some cymbals in there. Yeah. I don't feel like I overplayed the song. I still feel like I played appropriate, but I approached that more like, if I was playing this song, this is what I do.
Commenters are horrible.
They are.
It's the worst. On social media, it's like you can find the person or something, so it's just a little bit less anonymity, I guess, or more, less, because YouTube is just sort of like, you've got people from all over the world, and they might not realize that words actually hurt other people and stuff. I don't know, but
you played the pick on that bass.
I swear, you have nothing better to do.
I've been getting more comments on my old content quite a bit recently for whatever reason, and somebody commented on my cover of a Filter song, and it was just one word. It said decent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what you mean. Or is this are you kissing me and then kicking me in that? Or
yeah,
I'm like, okay, well, thanks. If you don't like it, you can just say you don't like it.
Drummers, as much bros as drummers are in terms of like the brother, and sisterhood, the community of drummers is probably the strongest of any instrument, I think, even more than guitar players. But on the other hand, they can be the lamest too in terms of that kind of stuff. I don't know what's up with that.
I don't either. I since I've been teaching full time, it's like my network of other professional drummers and drum teachers and musicians in general is just like really expanded.
Yeah.
And it's true, like all my drummer friends, it doesn't seem like it's as strong locally, but nationally, like there's like a real commitment to supporting each other and all of that.
Well, I think we were hoping locally, when James stopped doing Day of Percussion, that there was someone else that was going to carry the torch and keep it going to some degree, and have clinicians come in and have this, at least a couple stages set up and people doing clinics or whatever it could be, and that you still can, and somebody should. I've considered doing that for a bass group, just a bass group together quarterly was what I was thinking might be fun, and doing a theme. And the first theme I was thinking might be a portrait of Jocko.
Oh,
and having maybe like 5 players perform a song, and we do a little, little Q&A kind of type thing. Have a giveaway. 12 Fret Music said he'd sponsor it, so if I got the time, I might do something like that. But I'd love to see the bass player community get together a little bit too.
That would be cool. I would go. I'm not a bass player.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Drummers just have this. Well, for me, I really have a strong connection with bass players. I'm never going to get on stage and play with another drummer.
Yeah.
At least not to my knowledge. I'm not.
But it's only been Day of Percussion here. We've only had this type of thing for drummers.
Yeah.
There's no guitar players, no bass players, no keyboard
players.
Well,
you could spearhead that, and then I feel like if you did that, then the responsibility is going to lie on me to do this.
Pretty much.
Man, Scott, thanks so much for hanging out with me today,
dude,
and doing this. I love it. And I was trying to I don't remember the last time I saw you. I know we've talked on the phone quite a bit.
Probably when we were doing a video in here or something.
Yeah. Well, me breaking my leg kind of slowed things down.
There was that.
Yeah. It's I'm doing pretty good. Today's a good day.
Dude, you're doing great.
Just trying to. Sometimes I look like a penguin when I'm trying to walk.
You're walking. You're playing music.
Yeah. I tracked drums this last weekend, and I listened to the playback, and I just for Jeff, and I'm just waiting for feedback. But my leg hurts so bad when I track that. Like if I soloed the kick drum, I'm like, they're gonna have to put some kind of kick leveler on there if he likes that performance, or I'm gonna have to re-record it because
or do it in advance. Do whatever you think needs to be done to it before you send it off is what I would do.
Well, I've already sent him just like a rough idea. Here's what I played. If you like it, I'll send you the tracks.
Yeah.
But when I listen to it, I'm like, I think I could do that better.
So if you need drum tracks, Fred Fisher.
Yeah.
If you need bass tracks,
Scot
hit me
Alexander.
up.
Yeah. We're a great rhythm section, I think.
There's always that too. Yeah. Just come over here and do it simultaneously.
Yeah. If you're a
Tell us what
national
to do.
touring band that need a bass player and drummer,
Sure.
we're in.
Yeah.
We have to have separate hotel rooms though.
At this stage of the game, yeah, dude. The snoring. Dude. The Dishwalla guys are like, I'm sorry, but he's gotta have his own room. Yeah. That's so bad.
I have my nights where there was a truck driving in the room all night.
Mhm.
And then I snore too sometimes.
Right.
That's how that's working. Dude, thanks again,
Oh,
Scott.
my pleasure.
I love it.
Thanks you guys for hanging out.
Yeah.
It has been a long chat, so
Yeah.
have a good one, you guys.
Good stuff. All right. I'll see you next week. I have no idea what next week's topic's going to be, but I'll promote it soon.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good
Sweet.
day,
Have a
everybody.
good one, guys.
Bye.